Welcome to today's podcast. This is the first podcast of its kind. I am Steffi, and I'm here to talk to you today about gaming and all sorts of gaming and how gaming has impacted our lives and how just different kind of scenarios and different kind of topics we're going to be talking about to do with gaming, and just how gaming has impacted everyone's lives for the past 30, 40 years and how it will expand in the near future and how, kind of different things related to it, like feminism, Black Lives Matter, all that kind of stuff, how it's related to gaming. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a particular character who I love and who's probably my favourite video game character ever. Her name is Frazer. And for this podcast, for this episode, I'm going to talk about sort of Chloe as a character and who Chloe is, and why I think she has the best personal development, just not in terms of just in Uncharted alone, but also in the whole of the Naughty Dog, every sort of Naughty Dog game, and how out of every single character in Naughty Dog there has been, she's had the best character development. So you might be wondering why Nadine isn't being spoken about. Nadine, in a way, we haven't seen enough of her character development yet, and because she's literally Uncharted 4. Lost Legacy was only set like a couple months afterwards, and even though there was a character development, we didn't really see much of it. So, what I do want to discuss is, so Chloe as a character, she obviously came into Uncharted in 2007, and it was at a time where video game acting was still kind of frowned upon. There wasn't much of it because, and it was sort of the first kind of games that introduced motion capture as well. So and also Chloe as a female, as a character, she was like a character that was introduced to us, so it was very sexy, very kind of like didn't give a shit, all that kind of stuff. And the fact that how, in a way, she wasn't, the thing is though, she wasn't actually sexualized massively because, Amy Hennig, the goddess of of Uncharted, who wrote Chloe's character, she I think it was thankful that a woman wrote Chloe, because if it had been a man, do we know? I mean, to be fair, two men wrote Chloe in Lost Legacy, and they did a fine job with it. So, you wouldn't expect, you would want to expect it from a man, because some people wouldn't expect it from a man, but they didn't. So, thank God for them doing that. What I will say is that it's very, I think Chloe as a character is very complex, because you kind of see her as this person who is so strong-willed and so she doesn't care about anything, but there's a deep side, it takes the right person to unlock it. And I definitely think that Nadine did that in Lost Legacy, because I feel like in Lost Legacy they both learned something from each other. I feel like Chloe from Nadine learned that you have to take things slow, and also that by, she hurt Nadine's feelings because, she lied to, spoiler alert here, she lied to Nadine about Sam being the one that they were after. So it's kind of like, you have to see where kind of she's coming from. And I think, and also with Chloe as well, it was, oh, my cat's in the room, Jesus. With Chloe, you kind of have to have this thing where, this is coming from the top of my head, by the way, because I love her, and I've also thought about this kind of stuff as well. And you have to understand, like, Chloe is she's complex because in her own way, because she, you don't find out about her dad until Lost Legacy, and you kind of see the reasons for her being the way she is. So I've actually come up with my own sort of, my cat is just, what the hell is my cat doing? My cat, oh God. I came up with my own sort of thing about why Chloe's personal development, and kind of why I think it was the best character development, not only in Uncharted, but also in Naughty Dog's kind of history. So I want to talk about how she had the best character development for me it was Chloe, because you learn a lot about why she was the way she was in number 2 and 3, specifically Uncharted 2, because she had a no care attitude. She was only really there for herself and didn't care about those who got hurt. And the scenes with Jeff was as an example. But I mean, although she was, some of them reasons were kind of justified, because obviously, let's be honest, Nate treated her like shit, because because it's like they were there together, and as soon as Elena came along, it was like, like he was kind of like, it's almost kind of like he wanted to save both, he wanted to be with both of them, and wanted to save both of them, but that wasn't going to work. That wasn't how it worked. And in Chloe's eyes, he was being stupid. And in Chloe's eyes, she said, just dance with the one that bought you, and it was a perfect metaphor, because Chloe, you could see Chloe was pissed off, because she was like, yo, we've come here together, and we are essentially a couple, and this girl you used to like is coming along, and now you're suddenly doing this. Like, it wasn't fair. So that's what kind of the feel I get from this. Anyway, so and she always walked away from stuff she knew or thought she couldn't get away from, which I think is partly because of her father, as he couldn't walk away, because obviously he was an archaeologist, and he was also searching for the tusk of Ganesh, and that was basically his life. And it got to the point where Chloe never saw her own father, and as well, it's like, so her dad even sent her mum and Chloe off to Australia because it wasn't safe. And then spoilers, if you didn't know that already. And then obviously, and because her father couldn't walk away from things, that was his demise. And which I think partly why, and you can kind of see that change in number 3, because when with Chloe, when she doesn't walk away, because when she walks away, because the change is kind of basically her starting to care about everyone else, because you can see a change in number 3 when Charlie Cutter, we love Charlie, get played by I remember his name. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. I should know this, but I've forgotten. It probably hit me out of nowhere. And Charlie gets hurt, and because the thing is, my theory is that her and Charlie were together, because the way they kind of were together, it kind of, because it was like the way her and Nate and her were together, but it wasn't as it was more sexual rather than, you know what I mean. So but yeah, and because she really cared about him, and she knew that it was time to walk away from what they were doing, and even if Nate wasn't going to. And by that, you definitely, because what I love about Chloe was that she got over Nate quick. Like and definitely I feel like, because when at the end of number 2, when Chloe obviously was like, do you love her? And he was like, yeah. And he felt bad, but it was like, but you know what, Chloe understands. Chloe isn't the kind of girl to get in a relationship, because she's she's independent anyway, which is why it's impossible for people to ship her with Nate, because she's not that kind of girl to get in a relationship. I think her and Nate would have been good together, but there we go. And then and I feel like, but like, by the time Lost Legacy came along, you can definitely tell that Chloe had matured, and she definitely learned a lot of things from Nadine, and one of them being just take her time, and when they're on some sort of expedition, just to really think about things and think about other people's feelings, because that was one of the problems that Chloe had, and she only cared about herself and didn't care for anyone else. But that didn't change. But that did change for number 3, because it started to change drastically, because in Lost Legacy, because you could see the dynamic between Chloe and Nadine, and I think when Nadine punched her in the face, that was a wake up call, because she realised that she'd fucked up, and she never had to apologise, and she's never had to apologise to anyone before. So it was kind of hard for her to do that, and as explained in the game, she said that she's not a people person, and she's not good at the whole people thing, so it explains a lot of her actions for number 2, which is why she's a better person by the time Lost Legacy comes along. Going back to, the whole kind of her caring about herself, this is the thing as well with Chloe, is that she was kind of this person who, because she'd always been by herself, and she was her only child as well, as far as we know, she was her only child. And, I mean, she could have siblings. You never know. She could have, you never know. Listen, knowing Uncharted, they're probably going to swing some shit and say, like, oh, she's got a sister or something, But, yeah, and it's kind of, yeah. So with that in mind, and she was kind of a loner, because I'm assuming in Australia they have primary school like they do in England, and I assume in school she was kind of like a loner. Maybe she had like 1 or 2 friends, and I've got a feeling like she had guy friends in school, because I feel like she gets along better with guys than she does with women. But that's evident with Nadine. It's weird, because with Nadine as well, it was like her and Nadine got along so well. So that's why it's kind of a bit hard to assume that she didn't have any friends, but I feel like she did, because she was kind of, I feel like she was an emo in school, if that makes sense. But yeah, and I feel like, she definitely had this kind of thing about her where she was a loner, and it was quite sad because when you learn about her, I think her dad kind of rubbed off on her as well, because her dad probably was a loner himself, and even though he had this expedition, it was like, what do you do? And when Nadine punched her in the face, that was definitely a wake up call, because Nadine punching her in the face was kind of, to Chloe, was like, shit, like, I've messed up, I fucked up, I need to fix this. And this was her first kind of situation where she did that, where she had to fix it and she had to sort it out. But yeah, and so she, she never apologized to anyone before, and it was fucked up. She knew she fucked up and whatever. And by the time Lost Legacy came around, by the time Lost Legacy finishes, and there's a cutscene with Nadine and Chloe discussing to go after the train, and Chloe decides to go for it by herself, knowing that she's going to die. I think at that point she feels like there's nothing there to really live for, and even though her and Nadine are friends, she still feels like she's not deserving of life, basically, and of what she's of her friendship with Nadine. And whereas she has, because she definitely changed as a person, because if it was any other time, or if it wasn't Lost Legacy, if it was number 2, for example, she wouldn't have cared about the people that were going to be killed. She wouldn't have given a shit about Nadine, let's be honest. And she wouldn't have cared that this bomb that Asava trade shoreline for, I don't think Chloe would have given a crap. But I think also because as well, because not only was it because she started to care, but also because this was her own people. This was India. This was where she was born. This is where her father's from. And this is her heritage. So I feel like, and I feel like also she hadn't. I think if she hadn't met the little girl in the village, I don't think that would have happened either. So, she wouldn't have cared about people that were going to be killed and by the bomb. And I think also, but I think, and it also had, I think it definitely had an effect of how she played her role in the ending of the game. But I also feel like all these actions have also made her the most developed character, not only in Uncharted, but I think in the whole of Naughty Dog, as I explained before, because she's, and also because she's the only character that went from, well, this is my opinion, but she's the only character that went from being the shitty person, not caring about anyone else but herself, and not caring who died and whatever, to basically becoming a person who could actually be a hero and didn't feel the need to have to kill everyone to get through to where she needed to be. I mean, forget the gameplay for a second, because the gameplay, you kind of have to go through the gameplay to kill everyone. But but it's like, because the difference between The Last of Us Part 2 and Uncharted Lost Legacy, well, Chloe, the difference between Ellie Williams from Last of Us Part 2 and Chloe from Uncharted is that with Ellie, it was revenge. It was just literally, it was straight and plate revenge, and it was revenge for killing Joel. It was a cycle of revenge. Whereas, and it was kind of and the thing is, even though it was gameplay and you had to kill those people, it was kind of, there was still intent behind the killing. Whereas with Chloe, it was like, even though there was intent behind the killing, because she had to get past that sort of area, her whole point was getting this task, getting this treasure. There was no kind of revenge thing, whatever. There was no revenge kind of that, and that's why there's a massive difference between the two. But I mean, I don't know if you guys agree or if you guys agree with it, but that was sort of my opinion on Chloe and how she kind of had this, and I think there's definitely differences between Chloe and Ellie from The Last of Us, and even though Chloe's a grown-ass woman, okay, first of all, and secondly, and Ellie's a teenager, so it's, I think because Ellie was so young, you would expect it more from Chloe, because it, not in terms of her as a character in a way, but in terms of as an adult, because when you're an adult, you have more of you're more stronger, so you're more aggressive. Whereas with someone who's Ellie is a teenager, yeah, she's a young adult, but she's still a teenager, and she's still quite young. Whereas I think Chloe's like 30 years older than her. I think about 30 years. So there's a 30-year difference between them, and it's like, and it's kind of, there has to be a kind of, there was, sorry about the sirens, but there's definitely a kind of there's difference in a way, and I feel like she, you know, the character growth was amazing, and I do think there needs to be a lot more, because I think this is why we need another Uncharted game, because with Nadine as well, it's like with Nadine, she obviously didn't get time to develop much in Lost Legacy. I mean, she developed so much since we saw her in number 4. You definitely saw her soft side, because you saw her smile. And even though she smiled in Uncharted 4, it was a smile of happiness. It wasn't a smile of, oh, I'm evil, you know? Or I'm this bitch and I'm gonna kill these brothers because, you know, they're coming after this jewelry and I'm with Rafe. Whatever, you know, whatever. And I think you definitely feel sorry for Nadine and then in number 4, because Nadine got double crossed, because it was like, you know, I feel like it was a point where at that point Rafe got really greedy, and it was to the point where, you know, this is the thing as well, because you have to understand, because the way, I'm not gonna lie to you, the way Nadine got punched in the face by Rave, I was mad. I was like, excuse me, like, can you like Rave? But yeah, it just, that's it. Graham McTavish was the one that voiced Charlie Clark. That's it. Graham McTavish, you are a genius. But yeah, and it's kind of, you know, and you know, with Chloe and everything, like Claudia Black, who plays Chloe, is an amazing actress, and I feel like without Claudia, because I know there was different, because apparently I heard that apparently Emily Rose, who plays Elena, actually auditioned for the part of Chloe, but Claudia got it instead. And apparently there are different people for Chloe anyway, as it is, and I feel like without Claudia Black, you can't have Chloe. And I mean, there's obviously the new Uncharted film that's coming out next year, unfortunately next year now, and you've got Sophia Ali playing Chloe, and I've always wanted to see a live action version of Chloe, because I want to see how it's portrayed in that way rather than through a voice and through motion capture. You know, there has to be kind of some sort of thing that, you know, and I am a bit nervous about the Uncharted movie, just because I'm quite nervous about how they're going to portray Nathan Drake, because this is the problem with the movies and stuff like that. The only movies that really did work was the Resident Evil ones and the Tomb Raider movies. Because didn't Tomb Raider was a game before it was a movie, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a movie before it was a game before it was a movie. And it's kind of you know, and so I don't even really watch the Resident Evil movies, which I've not seen yet, but I've seen Infinite Darkness and it's amazing. And I've seen and the Tomb Raider movies. I've not seen them in years though, but you know, those are the only ones that really sort of worked. And apparently the Mortal Kombat movie was apparently really shit, but that's what I've heard. But these are just opinions. And I feel like with the Uncharted movie, because they've based it before the first game, because technically it's because the Golden Abyss, which is the PS Vita game, that was technically before Drake's Fortune, and because it's set before then, so Drake is he's in his early 20s, so he's really young at this point, and you know, and I'm just nervous about how Chloe's going, because the thing is, I'm confident about Chloe being portrayed by Sophia Ali, because I've seen Sophia Ali in I've not seen her in a lot of stuff, but I've seen clips of her and stuff, and she'd be amazing as Chloe. I can see her as Chloe, so it's, you know, it's kind of I think it's gonna be a mix of opinions, but with Chloe, Chloe as a character is very difficult to portray, because I honestly feel like, so I'm going a bit off topic here, but I honestly feel like with Chloe and River Song from Doctor Who are very similar characters, because, well, in their own way, because they're both very they're independent women. They both their parents are basically dead. Spoilers for Doctor Who if anyone didn't know. But well, timeline wise, yeah, kind of. But yeah, and it's, you know, it's a very kind of they're very similar characters, because not only, and also as well because they love adventure. But I'm just rambling on here. But I think with Chloe as well as a character, if Claudia Black wasn't playing her, I don't think I ever would have like known Claudia Black anyway. And it's kind of to the point where I think you have to be the casting has to be amazing. The casting has to be good. The casting has to be really good, and the fact that I think as well, because if you've with Chloe as a character, I feel like as well, because you could definitely see, going back to how her and Nadine were together, like Chloe, even though it's not canon, Chloe is possibly bisexual, and you would never have thought of that when number 2 came out, because you never would have seen that kind of side to her. And you could, in my opinion, I feel like she's better friends with when it comes to men. I think she's better when she's friends with men rather than women, because with men, I feel like she kind of gets along with them easier, because women probably feel threatened by her, because let's be honest, Chloe is stunning and Chloe's beautiful, and the thing is, don't get me wrong, Elena's beautiful as well, but I think Elena felt threatened by her because Chloe was so pretty, and Chloe had this, I feel like, because Claudia Black did say herself that Elena, that Chloe I think Elena wishes that she had the life of Chloe, because that Chloe wishes she was able to have the life of Elena, because because it was so easy for Elena to just settle down, whereas Chloe wasn't. And I feel like at some point Chloe does want to retire, and I feel like Chloe never will retire, but I feel like Chloe does want to retire. And it's just an amazing kind of way to I think just to sort of see that Chloe I feel like is a very underrated character, because you rarely see her in fan art and stuff like that, and you rarely see her being mentioned on gaming and whatever, and it's very sad, because Chloe is actually a very recognisable character, believe it or not. And I mean, so is Nathan Drake, but I think like Nathan Drake, because there was a time where people didn't like Lost Legacy because it didn't have Nate in it. I'm like, hold on a minute, but like with Chloe, Uncharted Lost Legacy proves that it can work without Nathan Drake. It proves that it can work without. It can prove that the Uncharted series can go on without Nathan Drake, and it's an amazing kind of concept. Really, it's kind of amazing how Chloe was able to kind of do that and be this woman who grew up in Australia, who had this father who was barely in her life anywhere as it was, and all she had left of him was this little Ganesh statue. Where I've also noticed with Chloe as well, that when she felt vulnerable, and when she felt like things were reminding her of her father, she kind of held on to, she kind of not caressed, but she kind of, is the word caressed? She kind of caressed the statue that her dad gave her, because I think it was like a kind of comfort toy thing in a way. But yeah, I honestly do feel that she definitely had this side to her, and she definitely is a woman who deserves more appreciation, I feel like. And also, with Chloe, the reason why I think she's my favourite character is because, when there's something about a character that you can't explain, but it's there. That's kind of me right now. She definitely has this quality about her, where most characters that I've adored do, like River Song, Eren Sun from Farscape, who's also played by Claudia Black as well, and like the 11th Doctor and Doctor, it's just, there's definitely appeal to Chloe. And I feel like as well with her, I feel like somebody who's of ethnic minority, of an ethnic minority as well. I mean, at first I thought I thought Chloe was British. I remember thinking, I was like, she's Australian. I was like, what? You wouldn't think she was Indian until you kind of researched it, but you definitely see the Indian vibes, and I feel like definitely for people who are of ethnic minorities, they would look up to her, because it's a shame that you don't even know it until Lost Legacy, because you don't really see that she's because she's Australian, so you think she's white, and it's a shame you don't see it till Lost Legacy, because she would be such a good role model for people who are of colour, because when Asav calls her a half breed, she's like, wait, what? Like, because I feel like she's been called that, because people don't believe that, people wouldn't, I think looking at her, you wouldn't believe that she was half Indian, but then I think, like, because of her hair and everything, I feel like with Chloe, she definitely stepped up to the game, and she definitely had this kind of quality about her where, she just needed kind of this, I think definitely her learning from Nadine kind of changed her as a person as well, because I think after the whole Charlie situation, because obviously they, Chloe's in the gate number 3 for like 20 minutes and then she's gone. I feel like with Chloe, she learned after the whole Charlie situation, and when it came to Lost Legacy, I feel like originally she thought, okay, well, this is going to be easy. That she originally you kind of, because you, and also you never seen her interact with a little girl before as well, so it was kind of new to see that, and to see that she's actually really good. She's kind of good with children in a way, in her own sort of way, and she does care. She isn't this cold-hearted bitch that was first perceived in the second game. So, I mean, but I also definitely think you saw that with Elena as well, when obviously Elena got hurt by the shrapnel because the grenade that Harry set off when, and you definitely saw that she did care about Elena. I think, she didn't want Elena to die, because I think also partly she knew because Nate loved her and she cared about Nate. So it was, I think you definitely saw that kind of side to her where she was starting to kind of care about her. But yeah. Just to wrap things up, but yeah, just to the last couple of points, I feel like relevant. Chloe definitely is somebody who people do look up to, and I feel like she needs to be credited a lot more. Chloe is somebody who I would love on my team if I was going treasure hunting or something, and I feel like if there was another game with if there was a new game with Chloe and Nadine, I feel like there needs to be Nadine's dynamics more, and also Chloe expanded more, because I would love to see her past and how, because maybe she's been the same way since she was a child, and maybe because of that, it's, her whole adult life has just been the same kind of cycle. It's been the same kind of cycle for years, and so I would love to see a game where we kind of explore back into Nadine, maybe Chloe's past, and see, or maybe even a DLC of Chloe's past or something, or Nadine, because we know that Nadine's dad is still alive, because obviously the father retired, because obviously she would have said that he would have died otherwise, so it'd be interesting to see kind of what happens with that. But I think that's all I have to say on Chloe. Thank you so much for listening to my first ever episode of my first ever podcast. So the next kind of episode be coming along kind of different sort of things, just about different games like The Last of Us, maybe even a bit of The Sims, Spider-Man, The Walking Dead game, Until Dawn, GTA, Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider as well, The Wolf Among Us, just different kind of games, even different kind of just any kind of gaming and the gaming community. And also you can follow me on Twitch at DarkQueen21. I'll put all my stuff below in the episode titles and stuff like that. But thank you so much for listening to my podcast. It's been a pleasure talking about Chloe, because I never get to talk about it very often. So it's been an absolute treat, and you never know, in the future I might have some guests with me talking about these games. And we're also going to be talking about different topics as well, such as Black Lives Matter, and just in a way how, as a female, gaming has changed in the last 30 years. Well, the last 20 years, actually. But yeah, so thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And your girl, Steffi, we'll see you next time.